You are not broke. You are trapped. The mortgage that decides where you live, the job that decides how you spend your days, the debt that decides what you can and cannot do, the salary that disappears before the month ends and resets the whole cycle again. This is not poverty. This is obligation, and most people never learn the difference. Financial freedom is not a number in your account. It is the progressive removal of those constraints, one at a time in a specific order until the cage is gone. This is what each level of that removal actually looks like. Most people confuse financial freedom with wealth. They are not the same thing. A $200,000 salary with $300,000 in debt, a mortgage at the edge of what's serviceable, and zero assets generating income is not financial freedom. It is a gilded cage. The bars are made of obligation, not poverty. A $50,000 salary with no high-interest debt, 6 months of expenses saved, and $800 a month going into an index fund has more real freedom than most people earning 4 times as much. Freedom is not about what you earn. It is about what you owe. What you owe to your landlord, your lender, your employer, your past decisions. That is the cage. Every financial obligation you carry is a bar. Every one you eliminate is a bar removed. 8 levels, 8 stages of a cage being taken apart. This is what each one feels like from the inside. Level 1. Freedom from crisis. You have $4,200 in a high-yield savings account. That is it. That is the level. It does not sound like freedom. It does not feel like it either. Not yet. But something has changed that you will only understand the first time it is tested. The boiler breaks in January. The repair quote is $1,800. 3 months ago, this was a catastrophe. A credit card, a missed payment somewhere else to compensate, a week of low-grade panic. Now, it is a problem. You transfer the money, the boiler gets fixed, the savings account is lower, but the spiral doesn't start. That is what level 1 actually is. Not comfort, not security, the removal of the spiral. Before this level, every unexpected cost triggers a chain reaction. After it, the chain is broken. You sleep differently. Not well. The savings are thin and you know it, but differently. The worst-case scenario has been pushed one step further away. You build it slowly. $50 the day after payday. Automatic. Untouched. Every month. The number grows without being felt. That invisibility is the point. The emergency fund does not buy comfort. It buys options. 1 bar of the cage, removed. Somewhere below this level, an unexpected cost is spiraling into something else entirely. You are no longer there. Level 2. Freedom from debt. The credit cards are gone. The personal loans are gone. The things that were quietly compounding against you every month, gone. What remains is structural. A mortgage at a rate you chose. A student loan at a rate low enough to leave alone. These are debts you selected. They are not debts that selected you. The distinction matters. High-interest debt is not just money owed. It is a monthly tax on every decision you made before you understood how money worked. It arrives automatically, before you have a say. It reduces every paycheck before you ever see it. Eliminating it does not feel like gaining money. It feels like stopping a leak. You notice it in the mathematics of your month. There is space now where there was not space before. $340 a month that used to disappear into minimum payments now stays. You redirect it, not to spending, to the portfolio, to the next level. Every debt payment you were making was a bill sent to you by your past self. You have settled that account. That version of you no longer has a claim on your future income. Every dollar you earn from this point forward works only forward. Every debt payment is a tax on your past self. Eliminate it, and every future dollar is entirely yours. 2 bars of the cage, removed. Level 3. Freedom from paycheck dependency. You have 6 months of expenses in savings. $18,400, enough to cover rent, food, utilities, transport, and the minimum obligations for 6 months without earning a dollar. This number is not exciting. It does not generate returns. It sits in a high-yield account, earning something modest and doing nothing dramatic. What it does is change the nature of every conversation you have at work. Before this level, you negotiate from need. A raise conversation happens with a silent deadline attached. You need this to work because the alternative is a version of your life you cannot afford. The employer knows this, not explicitly, but structurally. After this level, the conversation is different. Not because you say anything different, because the internal state is different. You could leave. Not comfortably, not indefinitely, but you could survive the gap. That possibility, even if you never act on it, changes the quality of every professional interaction you have. You stop tolerating things you previously tolerated because the alternative felt too costly. A difficult manager, a process you disagree with, a direction that doesn't make sense, these become things you can name. The moment you can survive without your job is the moment your job stops owning you. You still need it, but it no longer owns you. That is the difference. 3 bars. Removed. Level 4. Freedom from a bad job. You quit. Not because you have something else lined up, not because the market is favorable, not because the timing is right, because the job is wrong and you have enough to leave. This is not recklessness. The savings are there. The debt is gone. The portfolio is running on its own momentum. You have done the arithmetic. You have 8 months of expenses covered. The portfolio will not be touched. The automatic transfer keeps running even from savings. You give 4 weeks' notice. You spend the last 2 weeks differently than any previous 2 weeks in your working life. You are not performing departure. You are already somewhere else. The month after is uncomfortable in a way that is entirely different from the discomfort of staying. This discomfort has a direction, the other didn't. Most people never reach this level, not because they can't afford to leave, because they wait for a rescue, a better offer, a promotion, an external event that makes the decision for them. They endure a job that is wrong for years, waiting for permission from somewhere else to leave. The 4th level of financial freedom does not require a perfect next step. It requires enough runway to choose your next step deliberately. Most people never quit a bad job. They wait to be rescued by a better one. 4 bars. Removed. Level 5. Freedom from financial anxiety. This one is harder to locate than the others. There is no specific number, no account balance that triggers it, no transaction that marks the transition. You notice it in absence. Something goes wrong, a car issue, an unexpected medical cost, a month where the numbers don't quite line up, and money is not the first thought. It used to be the first thought, every time. Before the problem had a shape, before you knew how serious it was, the financial dimension was already calculating. Can I afford this? What does this cost? What do I move to cover it? At level 5, those questions still come, but they are not first. The problem comes first, then the solution, then somewhere in the process, the financial dimension, which is now, in most cases, manageable. The sequence has changed. You do not notice this happening. It accumulates quietly, over months, maybe a year, and then one day something goes wrong and you find yourself thinking about the problem itself before the cost of fixing it. That is level 5. It is not the absence of financial concern, it is the removal of financial anxiety as the default lens through which every problem is filtered. Financial anxiety is not a personality trait, it is a structural condition. Change the structure, and the anxiety changes with it. 5 bars removed. The background noise that has been present for so long you stopped noticing it is finally, almost imperceptibly, quiet. Level 6. Freedom from income dependency. Your portfolio generates $2,800 a month. Your basic expenses, rent, food, utilities, transport, the irreducible minimum of your life, are $2,600 a month. The math is complete at its most essential level. You could stop working right now. Not comfortably, not in the version of your life you have built, but you could stop. The lights stay on. The food is there. The rent is covered. You do not stop working. That is not the point. The point is that work is now a choice in a way it has never been before. Not a comfortable choice. The $2,800 does not cover everything. The lifestyle you have built requires more, but the existential dependency is gone. The job is no longer the thread from which everything hangs. You go to work differently. Not dramatically. You do not announce this to anyone, but the internal architecture has shifted. A project you disagree with. You say so. Not because you are brave, because the worst-case scenario no longer terrifies you. The first dollar of passive income is not money. It is proof that time and money can be separated. That proof, held quietly, known only to you, changes the quality of every hour from this point forward. 6 bars. Removed. The rope that tied your time to your income has loosened. Not enough to drop, but enough to breathe. Level 7. Freedom from lifestyle constraints. Your passive income now covers everything. Not the minimum version of your life, the actual version. The apartment you chose, not the one you could afford. The travel, the food, the way you prefer to spend your time. $6,400 a month from the portfolio. $5,900 in monthly expenses. The margin is thin, but the life is full. You work, but not because you must. The work you do now is different from any work you have done before. It is chosen, not optimized for income or security or proximity to the next promotion. It is chosen because it interests you, or because it matters to you, or because you are good at it, and it gives you something that the absence of work would not. People who reach this level often describe it as feeling slightly unreal at first. The thing they have been working toward for years is present, but it arrived quietly, through a sequence of small decisions, not through a single dramatic moment. There is no announcement, no celebration that matches the size of what happened. Just Tuesday again, but different. The constraints are gone. The compromises that used to be made in deference to financial necessity, where you live, how you work, who you spend time with, no longer exist in the same form. At this level, you stop working for money. You work for meaning. That distinction, invisible from the outside, total from the inside, changes everything about how you show up to your own life. 7 bars removed. Level 8. Freedom from the game entirely. The wealth now generates more wealth than you spend. The gap between what the portfolio produces and what your life costs is no longer thin. It compounds. Year after year, the number grows regardless of whether you work, regardless of whether the markets have a bad quarter, regardless of what happens anywhere outside the structure you built. You are no longer a participant in the financial game. You are the structure. The decisions you make are no longer about survival or security or even freedom. They are about architecture. What this becomes, who inherits what gets built with what remains. You think about your children differently. Not because you can pay for things, you have been able to pay for things for years, but because the obligation you were born into, the obligation to trade your time for money, will not be passed to them in the same form. The cage that was handed to you at the beginning of your working life is not being handed forward. That is not a financial achievement. That is a generational one. The goal was never the number. It was the silence where the obligation used to be. At level 8, that silence is complete. All 8 bars, gone. Not with a sound, not with a moment, with the quiet accumulation of decisions made at every level below this one, compounded over time, until the cage was no longer there. 8 levels, 8 bars removed. But here's what almost nobody tells you about how the cage comes apart. Most people assume the levels happen in sequence, that you complete level 1 before starting level 2, that you cannot be free from anxiety before you were free from debt. That is not how it works. The levels overlap. They reinforce each other. Progress at one accelerates progress at another. But there is one decision, a single reframe, that begins dismantling every bar simultaneously. Most people never make it. Stay with us for 90 seconds. Every level we walked through is built on the same architecture. Not on income, not on investment returns, not on financial discipline alone. On the gap. The gap between what comes in and what you are obligated to spend. That gap, protected, widened, redirected, is the entire mechanism of financial freedom. Every level is a consequence of what you do with it. Most people spend their entire working lives trying to increase the left side of that equation. More income, a bigger salary, a promotion, a side hustle. The wealthy, the people who reach level 8, do something different. They protect the right side. They refuse to let their obligations grow with their income. Every raise that goes to lifestyle instead of the gap is a bar that stays in the cage. Every raise that goes to the gap is a bar removed. This is the reframe. Stop optimizing for income. Start optimizing for the gap between income and obligation. A person earning $60,000 who keeps their obligations at $40,000 has a $20,000 gap. That gap, compounded over time, builds every level of freedom described in this video. A person earning $200,000 who lets their obligations reach $190,000 has a $10,000 gap and a cage made of very expensive bars. The wealthy do not have more freedom because they have more money. They have more money because they protected their freedom first. The gap is the only number that matters. Everything else, every level, every bar, every stage of the cage being removed is a consequence of what you did with the gap. That decision is available at any income, at any level, starting now. Somewhere right now, someone is sitting in a meeting they didn't choose, doing work that is wrong for them, for a salary that will be gone before the month ends. They think the problem is the salary. It isn't. The problem is the architecture, the obligations that were built quietly, without a plan, until the cage assembled itself around a life that was supposed to be temporary. The cage is real, but it was built one bar at a time, and it comes apart the same way. Not through a single decision, not through a windfall, not through a salary that finally becomes enough. Through the gap, protected, widened, held, one bar at a time. The meeting ends, the salary arrives, the month resets, and somewhere an automatic transfer runs, not because the amount matters, because the gap matters. The market opens tomorrow. The game continues.